Because what is the moral of the story? Something had to be done to create an impression that I've lost touch with reality so that I don't get to be identified as a reliable witness to go, because I'm the only person that could have sent those people to prison, whoever is alleged to have committed problems. Because, I have all the information. All the information of shenanigans that happened in Mbombela. Money is claimed even before the stadium was built. So, attempts to cash out cash. So I have all the evidence that is needed. Already, I was called when results were about to be announced, which is one of the reasons why I started talking to the people that were pushing that I should be the chairperson of Mpumalanga. And I said, guys, I'm not here to die. I get an anonymous call. Say, we know. We could see even the numbers are in your favor. But just like it happened with others, you must know. Should you accept in any win, you must know you're going to Witbank wrapped in a in the ANC flag or government flag, whatever. So people can be prepared to kill at all costs. That's what it is. Not what I believe in. People talk about state capture. The problem doesn't begin with the state. The capture begins in the ANC, because at any point in time that is unable to deal with criminals within its own ranks, it tells you that those that are at levels where they have the authority to exercise that authority are also compromised. I first took a decision when I went to Mbombela, my first press conference, that I'm not going to take a salary. I'll direct it to worthy causes, and we're respecting those that benefited, particularly learners that performed very well, that needed some money to register at universities. Around the same time that I went asking for a beef up, because there were all indications that I must not come out of. There were actually attempts which I can't talk about, even physical. That made me leave Tegwane, and I had to find a safe house. Dr. Shabalala was busy mixing it's lead poisoning, my brother. It's lead poisoning. You must go read about what lead does. When it's in the body, stays, it doesn't move. Save. And he was mixing it. I can say it, he can come open. And I swear to him, are you aware you're a qualified doctor? I'm not your patient. You can't impose that I should go to 1 mil or whatever. He says, no, it's a message, it's an order from the one above. And they spoke again with Pegitele. They spoke again. And still, clearly the instruction was no, continue. The next thing, I found myself in 1 mil. I wasn't aware where I am. Totally disorientated. I'm told I was unconscious for 3 days. And when I counted back, because I asked one of the army guys, what's happening? Where am I? He says 1 mil. I said, what? He says, no, we're cutting you. If 2010 FIFA did not take place in Mbombela, we already gathered information that Morocco was already going with big bags to find a reason to punch hole into South Africa's host status, meaning the possibilities that South Africa would have been withdrawn.
So Mbombela was really fixing Mbombela was key.
It was key.
South Africa to get the World Cup.
That's why even Madiba said, hey, you have to go. And I said, they told me in 2006, I said, but I'm going to die there.
Welcome to another episode of The People's Eye. Today we're going to talk politics, more politics. We have a special guest. I'm not sure to call him a veteran of the ANC.
Not yet.
I'm not yet 60. Not yet 60.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, yes.
But I've been involved for over 40 years.
Stalwart.
ANC associated.
What's the right word? Stalwart. Well,
activist.
Okay. But you've been a long-serving member of the ANC. Likota Lazarus Lassy Chiwayo is here with us today. Most of you may not know much about him, but I think briefly his history is in politics. Activism, anti-apartheid activism is very rich. At some point, he was one of the youngest Robben Island prisoners. Then when we got our liberation, he was among the first cabinet members of Mpumalanga province. He has been around, but I will leave it to him. Mr. Lekota Chiwayo, welcome.
No, thanks, Pusizwe. And thanks for the invite. And, I wish to greet the viewers of this very important program and initiative that needs support as it creates a very important platform, alternative platform to mainstream media, to really drill into memory that can unleash and, bring out all that which our people need to know about.
Exactly. No, thanks for accepting our invite as well. You've been out of the public radar for a while. What have you been up to briefly? Underground activism still, or
there's one thing that the late President Mandela, said that I think I took to heart and embraced and internalized. When there were challenges in the movement, and I remember some point he prevailed over an idea of bringing out people that might be outside, those that he said, might be making a lot of noise if we are not bringing them into the fold of things, and they might actually, create problems when you have not brought them into a collective that makes them become bound by a collective decision-making processes. And I can't mention somewhere from COSATU and the SACP. And indeed, when it came to us, because I had a lot of one-on-one meeting sessions with him when I was based at Shell House then, where we started in 1992 as members of the National Executive Committee. We were on the 14th floor. I think they were on the 10th or 11th floor. Then he says, one thing you must know in politics is that there would be time where you might find yourself subjected to intense heat that will come from those that may not necessarily appreciate your rise and what they think are things that you're admired for. And he said, at any point that comes, the best thing to do is not to impose yourself, but to humbly remove yourself from a situation and not be on people's faces, so that, you safeguard your sanity, you safeguard your peace. But in instances where it may even be more dangerous, if you are unable to be silent, because some of us come from a generation where we are outspoken, we were very blessed to be exposed to enlightenment at a very early age, and that enabled us to also value wisdom.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you are exposed to that, you really become intolerant to low opinionated thinking, if I may put it that way, or if I may just be blunt, stupidity, and you become very wary of being an slicker, pardon me for my French. And I think it's because of being outspoken, firm, and at all times trying to align ourselves with the forebears of our liberation struggles. And at a point that we realize that you try to be among those that are distinguishable, distinct, and easy to separate from the general povo. We then decided it's no longer for us, especially when the possibility of being in that space carried a risk of being removed permanently from society. We decided, no, this is not the movement that we know, and this is not what we would be part of. And at least that which must be known about what we've done and what we've contributed must end at a point where we knew our voice mattered, and our power and the influence that we could have could influence the direction of things. It's simply, I can just bring a dimension of what happens in the nature's order. There's a clear distinction between the behavior and conduct and how these two creatures plug into the ecosystem, a lion and a hyena.
Yes.
A lion hunts. Lion invests in wisdom, in strategizing, in ensuring that it masters the art of cornering its praise.
Yes.
Even when it knows it has the power, that can overwhelm its praise. It will never start feeding on the prey before it releases air through its pipe so that it doesn't feel pain. But there's this other creature that can eat its prey while walking.
It's alive.
When it's alive. When it catches up with the prey, it even eats up to a bone marrow, to a point that there's nothing left for the ecosystem and the cycle, to be sustained. There would not be any vultures that would find meat. There won't be ants that would find something. Even the soil won't be drenched with that very important blood, because there's a very important
nutrients.
Exactly. Blood, a part of the ecosystem. Soil has to have some drenching. If it does not drain, it is blood. Flies must find something. So if a kingdom of lions is occupied by hyenas, there is no tomorrow.
Yeah, true. We're gonna.
So basically, I'm bringing that analogy to just say that when I realized that the kingdom that was once occupied by lions is overwhelmingly occupied by hyenas, we realized, no, this is not for us.
Yeah,
let's step back.
Yeah, we're gonna go deep into that.
Yes.
Very interesting, because you're saying you derived that attitude of stepping back from the most senior ANC members and founders. That's the advice that you took. Just going back to that, as a young Robben Island prisoner, when did you start your activism until you went to Robben Island?
It's a very, the activism and tracing what could be, what we may not have been aware that was an influence through our childhood. Evolution process, if you like. I was born in a community of converts, Christian converts that were driven out of Sekhukhune by King Sekhukhune then, and the converts themselves had among the first his younger brother, Dinkwanyana, who was a convert of the Lutheran Christian Church. It's called the Berlin Mission, Lutheran Church Mission in Berlin, LBC. And having fled when there was a whisper, we are told by the queen, the reigning queen, one of the reigning queens then, one of the queens actually, who was a mother to Dinkwanyana, that there was a decree that they have to be raided in the early hours of the morning and literally be eliminated, and only women and children had to be given a chance to convert, and they fled and found a place that they eventually settled on called Bochabelo in Toronkop, in Middelburg, in the Middelburg area, and that's where I was born. Raised by my grandmother just after a divorce or separation between my biological mom and dad when we were hardly 3. We lived in Tembisa, by the way, which is on the east end, but then went back into my grandmother's hands. And when I was hardly 6, just after 5, they were forcibly removed through the Group Areas Act and driven to, and literally dumped in villages in Limpopo. My own grandmother and the other villagers were thrown or dumped in Tafelkop, and others in Janefers and Mutatema. And so that's when my grandmother decided, because when we went there, the only thing that we had there was a brown army tent, nothing. None of the possessions. And by the way, those were very, very, I would say successful subsistent farmers that never had to work for anyone. The only reason they would find themselves in white and Indian retail shops then, primarily in and around the Bochabelo area, was when they had to buy, bread, light, match, boxes and paraffin. But otherwise they were selling, their produce across, you won't believe when I took my grandmother for a 95th birthday. In, just before she passed away. She she was literally telling me to drive her to all the places that she had been to selling, their produce, Bethel, Standerton, Ermelo. She knew almost the entirety of Mpumalanga on the, especially in the Khertsibande, area.
Yes,
and
yes.
one couldn't believe. But that's really the background. And I'm raising that because how the message got hammered in, because constantly she would say, white people removed us and we normally go there because my grandfather is buried in Botshabelo.
Yes.
We normally go there and interestingly, no one moved in. So they just destroyed and all of that. So when she repeatedly, kept on saying that, and I think it really got internalized. At 6, before I was even not 6, I had, because there was no other source of income. She gathered information in that village, Tafelkop, just after we dumped. And the following day, I was on a truck, that went to the farms to go extract cotton. And we're paid with, based on the weight of the extraction in the bags, we're paid with impupu and sugar. And of course, a few pounds. So I think that's where, what I can call conscientization of the injustice.
Yeah.
Injustice that our people went through, came to one's realization. And then moving to Witbank, which is where my grandmother decided that I should go and be raised, by my aunt.
Okay.
My aunt got married. My aunt got married to a Phahla Mohlaka that took a surname of a Malawian, which is Chiwayo.
Oh.
And basically, that surname comes from an arranged marriage between the grandmother, which is the mother of my stepdad. I won't call him my stepdad because Chiwayo has raised me as his son.
Yes.
And when the two adults met, my grandmother already had 3 kids, including Lawrence Chiwayo. So they converted because that's the only way that they could be allowed to stay in the township, in the house where they currently stay, which is home in Witbank.
Oh, okay.
So it's now another exposure when you get that history, because it was brought to my attention that our own people are not allowed to be in what was called White South Africa, which through the Land Act of 1913, 87% of the total surface area of the land was given to a white, a minority group, and only, 13%, and it was all arid areas, completely, marginalized, communities were dumped.
Yeah.
I mean, areas that it basically got our people marginalized with no economic activities in what later became Bantustan. So that's the other realization that brought one's attention to the discrimination, Racial Discrimination Group Areas Act. And
since we were young.
Yes, then 1976 happened when I was not even 10 years old. The explosion, the burning of beer halls in Witbank.
Yeah.
And the targeting of anything that was associated with the system. And that's what really, I think, really broadened and deepened our awareness that there is something wrong, especially because 6 houses away from mine, Ndala's son, Fanyana, or Fana Ndala, was killed. He was among those that were buried. So, and then we gathered that this uprisings engulfed the entirety of, especially Gauteng, what is now called Gauteng, primarily in Soweto.
Yes.
And Dad used to read Sowetan and the Citizen. So constantly, not a Star and Citizen.
Yeah.
Sowetan, occasionally, but on a daily basis, he would always send me to buy these papers. And I see this, gentleman that was an artistic impression of how Mandela looks, without any top, that exposed his very upper body with exposed ribs. And I read that he was on hunger strike, in solidarity with those that were killed. It was on the front page of Rand Daily Mail. And then I started asking, my dad, Lawrence Chiwayo, about it, and he really got deep into it. And of course, warned me that it's something that I shouldn't really find myself, taking to heart, or talk about. He just said, no, this is the background. And that's when I then established for the first time about Mandela being in prison and the ANC that was in exile. And then came the cross-border raids. It was a Drum magazine, I remember very well. It was in Drum magazine. And around that time, it was now 1979. And there's a gentleman that basically did not want to leave high school called Dusty Maluka. Eventually, he skipped the country and became Joe Modise's bodyguard. He was Philip More. I was amongst the first people, well, he said, that he came to look for when he came back. He was, at that time, part of IPOCO, the PAC. But he indicated that he's really stressed wherever he is. He would wish to branch into, that must have been 1981, 82. We wish to be connected with the ANC. And interestingly, it may be that there are other people that played a role in connecting him, but with the little information that I had as well, because I can't really remember the year. There was a network of comrades that were already active, that we were exposed to after our own uprisings that took place in Witbank. It must have been 1982-83, that assisted us in linking us up with Khotso House. But that took us to also a facility called Community Resource Information Center, Halfway House, COSATU. No, the COSATU was not there yet. It was SACC, yes. SACC, because COSATU was only launched in 1985, but NUM. So we got introduced to comrades in Gauteng, and that's when we then were privileged to be linked with the underground. Interestingly, one of the...
And you're still a teenager.
No, I was a teenager.
Trying to count.
No, I was a teenager.
12, 13, 14, around
13,
that time.
14. Among the people that I met when I was 13, 14, interestingly, is a gentleman that we are celebrating his 70th birthday called Shabungwenya. Then we made contact at Community Research Information Center. Among other people that we met were General... we call him Felix Mate, Deacon Mate. Stanza Pape, I got to meet Stanza. In fact, we were taken through underground, how to operate underground, how to build mass movements and all of that through training that Stanza Pape was responsible for at Creek Community Resource Information Center. It disappeared.
Wait, tell me, through that turmoil, you're still young and then you're getting involved with heavy matters of fighting the apartheid government,
and
getting into structures.
We're also at school.
My question is coming to that. The schooling, how was it not affected?
We literally, I became an underground operative of the ANC, literally at 14. Already active as a member of the SR. We started, the uprisings in Mpumalanga, depending of an inspector's car. I didn't go to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And by the way, over some of these things, I just hope I'm not followed. Fergale was an inspector whose car was burnt. Maybe let me put it generally. It was burnt owing to those uprisings that we agitated. It was myself, Soli Murape, late Soli Murape. There's also a Lassi Mashiane. There's a Skyza. There's a lot of youngsters in Witbank that were part of that. And what started the explosion was our disagreement with a principal that came there. That must have been in 1982, called Steve Ngwenya. Totongo, we call him Totongo. He eventually became a head of Mango College. And that's the person that really triggered that, because it would stop learners coming from farms, walking and hiking, that come late. He closed the gate and literally manned the gate and sent them back home. Started following those that did not have money for school fees, textbooks. And it's a very interesting thing. I had one of the most beautiful first girlfriend that I had, called Pinky Koza. Who looked like a colored. I don't know. I'm attracted more to the fairer skin of them all. I don't know what the reason is, but yeah. She had a long hair. And Totongo went into a class and cut
Yeah.
Hey, I think
that was
yes,
personal.
It was personal. It might have been a trigger for my political conscientization, not conscientization, but the resolve to say, no, now he has, he has crossed the boundary.
The line now.
And so as part, it's interesting. It came from there, but we already, against prefect systems and, and eventually we ended up, being part of the activities that were against Bantu education. But what brought our realization of the connection between Bantu education, all of what we experienced, Bantu education and apartheid, was directly through the influence and the awareness generated by the likes of Sefa Konyaka, Pani Mashego, Jackson Mtembu. But there were also those students that went to TEF, Ngoye, Rhodes University, and other universities that came as youth, as student leaders that then connected us to the YCS, Young Christian Students. And from there, we then established COSAS and Wheatbank Youth Congress. But in the case of my direct connection and interest, I think what really enabled us to go to Gauteng was when, after the penning of that car, there was a massive arrest of some of us. That's when then that we called. I think I still don't know how we've been connected. We checked with, those activists that were elders what to do, because we had to now take the responsibility in our hands. And that's when they said, no, Khotso House. And indeed, we found it when we were there. We were then connected with Matthew Posa's firm, because we're looking for Priscilla Jana. When we found out what we can do in tracing the whereabouts of some of our comrades and, getting legal support, we were told we had to go to Khotso House. That's where we met Sis Stephanie Mashide, who's one of the most prominent mothers. I met her as well. I think I was 14, who was with the Tennis Parent Support Committee. Okay. Then that's really how then the network expanded. On the other hand, it was Creek and the other halfway house. And so anything just got connected, and we found ourselves, at the center of everything that was happening, especially in Gauteng.
Yeah, exactly. And when does the time come for you to skip the country and go into
the first time,
to skip the country, actually, when we got arrested,
connected, the first time we got connected with our comrades in exile, and in fact, interestingly, among the most important people that are still intact with from Chomodise's family, because by virtue of having Dusty now, who then crossed, and I'm sure that he was assisted by those that we collectively helped to connect him with, because as I said, he left, he came back and wanted to be linked with the ANC, then he joined the ANC, then he became Chomodise's bodyguard and basically became part of the family. He passed away after he came back from exile. And the first time we were assisted to go across, it was through Swaziland, and eventually through Mozambique. So a lot of our comrades that we met, especially the Chomodise family and the Kotane family, I still interact a lot with them as if they are family, and that's how we met. But interestingly, when we went there with the 3 others from my township, we were told, but the ANC does not train young soldiers. There's no way that you can ever become baby soldiers here. And one of them was even showing us the size of the AK and said, you're almost the same height. So what we will rather do, we'll give you some crash courses. And they directed us into, as I said, how to operate underground. But most importantly also, that's when some connection with what I can say, intelligence crash course. But also, how to execute curio services, if you like. Because then when we came back, we're primary recipients of a lot of material that came that needed to be distributed. Reading materials, Chaba, African Communist, most of those books, I remember somewhere in Reader's Digest covers with birds and other animals so that they are not detected. But of course also distributing signals, information on signals, so now to assess radio freedom. So basically the involvement in those threefold. One, being part of building what we can call the rudimentary organs of people's power, which was the mass formations. That is why a very critical role that we played as young people of the 80s that Oliver Tambo called or referred to as the Young Lions generation, was that of creating the rudimentary organs of people's power, women organizations, youth organizations, student organizations, ensuring that wherever there's no labor organization that is linked to eventually COSATU in 1985. But we worked with NUMSA, and it was MUSA then NUMSA, then National Union of Unions, Pop Crew, Transport and General, FAU. This is where we're plugged.
I'm tempted to ask the question again. In all of this activism, were you able to finish school?
I finished. I did my matric in prison. Our education got disrupted. So, but we're scholars by day, and that's what that's the instruction we're given. That guys go back, and around the same time that I came back, I was then linked by the movement with the family of Roland Hunter and Ruth Hunter. Those were activists from the Jewish community. So we lived at their commune in Yeovil, Beria, from age 14. And that's constantly where we spend more time. So at night we're there. During the day we meet back at school here. So we were soldiers by night and underground operatives, but during the school we were presidents of the SRC. And
those were crazy days.
They were crazy days. And we were basically playing a pivot. We were more like a fulcrum around which all activities revolved of ensuring popular organizations were established. SACC, church, religious, traditional. It was us that were at the forefront of establishment of Contralesa, by the way. It is the youth that eventually became part of what is called South African Youth Congress. But what we did in the 80s, mid-80s, there was an explosion of youth organizations that were the building block of the South African Youth Congress that Peter Mugaba led. But it was driven more by community-based struggles, and especially young people that basically came from... I would say our entry point for most of us across the country were through the young Christian students, because it became much easier. And I think it was in the wisdom of the ANC and the elders that when you have to mobilize people, capitalize on organizations that can easily get them involved. So because most of us got through the YCS. The Student Christian Movement. Started with debate, then Student Christian, SCM, Student Christian Movement, yes. Then eventually, that's when those from TEF, VETS, and others then brought YCS as an appropriate vehicle. Then YCS automatically graduated into establishment of COSAS branches. Then COSAS branches established youth organizations. Your Alexander Youth Organization, your Witbank Youth, your Loyomo, Lowveld Youth Movement, all of this were, part of what came from the ecosystem of. That's how effective the underground operation of the ANC.
Fast forward, obviously you were a marked man. The security forces were after you since when you were young. Your imprisonment, how did it come about? Were you sold out? What happened?
It's the most painful thing that happened. Where we left, it was myself, Thomas, Thabo Nareng, Lassi Mashiane, and we spent most of the time outside the township. And when we came in that evening, Thomas Matlang, it was on the 8th of September. On that evening, Thomas Matlang was killed in 1986. Thomas Matlang was killed on the 9th of September. They went, and we all agreed. We all agreed, guys, let's go just talk to our parents. There was a resolution that we are living now forever. Because we're already hot. Because already in Witbank, there was a list of those that it was clear they were going to be killed. They even confirmed when I was arrested that we were so lucky. We found you at your place and you started making noise and telling us about Priscilla Chana, wanting to know who the captain that is in charge is. Police was in charge. And I called because we had that phone at home. I called and I found Priscilla Chana. I said, no, here they've come to arrest me. Please take the name of the one in charge. And you must know they took me from home. So I was actually, just as we got into the back, I went there flying without wings. Because they just lifted me and threw me into the buggy. Who told you all these things? you're a terrorist. So they were so angry because one of them told me that actually I was among those that they agreed I must be shot at the back. And must pretend just as they did with I think it was myself, Lassie, Mashiane, Opal, and so on. And there's a list of people that they said those ones don't even bother to arrest, shoot to kill. And they killed Thomas and planted bombs and hand grenades at his place. So they arrested me the following day because I then decided I was not sleeping at home because I knew they would raid me. Then I went just to try calm the old lady, and they pounced. I went there at 2, they were there at 4.
Oh, so it means they were aware
Still don't know who's the last person that saw me going home,
Yeah.
And that was it. The next thing I found myself on Robben Island.
But how did it feel at that time? Were you scared? Or maybe were you ecstatic that you were going to meet your heroes there?
Being scared was not in our vocab. Remember, and this is the reason why there's been a systematic, very conscious and deliberate coordinated strategy, ironically, from the enemy that engaged us and that knew who we were, brave, non-compromising, and we knew, I mean, we fought these people with everything we could hold with our hands. They came with, Caspars and ammunition that was, what could be used in a war. There was a war in this country, in the township.
It was.
We used dustbin lets, we used sticks, we used stones. I was one of the best, I'm a science student. I was one of the best manufacturers of Molotov. Molotov is a concoction of chemicals that would explode. And of course, even petrol bombs. I was one of the experts. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And one day I remember, it's so interesting, let me go a step or two. When I was at high school, I got the late Tamaha, who was the principal, to buy all the chemicals that we needed for us to do demonstrations, Well, literally.
For the chemistry class.
Yeah, for the chemistry class, for us to really be able to empirically derive, it's science is about evidence-based, thinking. So it's what we wanted to do. And there are two things that I asked him for us, because it was the space that was a laboratory, but that was not stocked. So we stocked the chemicals, but I also asked him to, get some hamsters, animals that we can. That was still there, but he left. So out of that, I actually mastered the what is called a periodic table, elements of the periodic table, and knew exactly what should not combine. At some point, I also actually almost got blind. Went blind. I don't know. I can't even remember. It must have been sodium and something. And when we went to test it next to the river, I declared to my friends there that now I can make the school disappear.
Yes. So you're stealing the school materials, chemicals,
of course.
To make bombs.
And they didn't know. I mean, there was a war in Witbank. And there were serious casualties of the army. We're not talking about police. The army, but they never spoke about that because they never knew what hit them.
Sure.
That's and they never expected that there would be a war. There was a war in the township.
Okay.
And there's violent German interest. I mean, how townships were created, there's an entry point and an exit. Just to make sure that everybody is encircled and doesn't escape. But that was to advantage because then it meant there was only one entry and one exit for them.
For them.
And going in, they knew those young white boys that came to the township, I think they were praying all the time that they had to go into the townships because they knew there would be casualties.
Very interesting. So you go to Robben Island, who do you find there?
Oh, no. The Robben Island, let me take you through something that Matthew Posa laughs all the time when I talk about. We spent over 2 years on trial. It was called Witbank 30 or 31. Mtembu got, may soul rest in peace, got discharged. 11 of us got convicted for anything between 6 years and 10 years.
Yes.
Now, we're taken to Bethal. We're taken to Paxton, which is a Witbank.
Yeah.
But we were known to be the most radical group that would fight at the slightest provocation with water. So there was no order. Wherever we were, we wanted there to be dual power, for dual power to prevail, for them to know we have our authority that ended where their boundary ends and they can take charge wherever. So we're unruly. Bethal, the only time that we would, just avoid fights would be when we have to engage dogs, police dogs. And that's why I have one of those dogs, a German Shepherd, because when I had an opportunity to own one, I just wanted to get into the psyche of that dog to understand why it became our enemy and a symbol of oppression.
Yeah.
But then when they came in the early hours, must have been at 2 o'clock in the morning, thrown into a dark truck that had no windows. Then whenever we had a refreshment station, I tried to endear myself to this guy, the prison warder, just to find out. Say, hey, we have no permission to talk to you. But I was talking to him in Afrikaans because I'm one of those that, didn't have a problem learning Afrikaans.
Yeah.
So as we drove, and we probably had about 4 stations and we were sleeping, between, we didn't know where we were going. And somewhere, I think we're in Kronstadt. And I managed to corner him. And he said, you know what, never ever ask me again. I'll just whisper in your ear, please don't tell anyone. But I said, oh yeah, he kept on saying, because I was asking, but who's in charge? He said, I'm in charge. I said, but how can you be in charge and tell me about what you can talk to me about? We just want to know where we're going. So I ended up saying, no, I'll just whisper that to you now. We're in Kronstadt. I said, where are we going? He said, no, I don't know. I went there. I said, guys, do you know where you're going? He said, no. I said, we're going to Robben Island. Kronstadt, there's no other prison that would have been. Kronstadt was for women. There's no, when we took that direction, I already knew as a student of geography too that, this one is going to Cape Town.
Going far.
And I was like saying, yeah! And I said, everyone is crying, Robben Island. And I was like, wow! I said, guys, do you know what well of information, of exposure, of history, of heritage, of wisdom we're going to be exposed to? This period that we're going to serve would be too little. And that's basically what I did. Upon landing on Robben Island, I had my own list. And I was asking wherever I'm going, who's there? What I did in the first, second week or third, when we're still at A, said, no. Actually, upon landing, we fought. Because in the morning, we got something that we had banned at Paxton Prison, and Bethel Prison, but Makowe. It looks like a fake mushroom. We refuse to eat that. We land on Robben Island. It's the first thing that they gave us. I said, whoa! And who's behind the provocation? The man that is sitting next to you, opposite to you. Says, no, we are not eating. Hunger strike. Hey, man. Landing, hunger strike, the leadership picks up. Hey, there are some hunger strike. ANC, so they called the leadership. Among them that came there is Tokyo. A few times, hey, young man, if you are members of the ANC, you are going to suspend this nonsense. I said, who are you? We are leadership. I said, hey, we are also leadership. we led the struggle there when we are not there. We were, and think of the psyche, think of the psychology of these creatures, ourselves, that we decided to make a stand, fight, lead our parents. Get them organized, create all these organizations that we got them to be part of, civic organizations, National Education Crisis Committee, Labor. We literally built NUM with Clement Zulu, the late, Crosby Moni, Hellboy. We built a network of what we call sectoral organizations that brought everyone. NUSA. When NUSA was established, we were part of. So we became organizers in our own name. Wherever we have our people that in their different strata and different sections and categories that we think that they have to be organized, mobilized and organized, we channeled them. We found ourselves imposed with no other option but to even create what we call people's courts to deal with serious problems of crime in our townships. And as we were doing that effectively, parents, mothers started bringing big cases now that involve misbehavior by fathers. who eat money that is supposed to come to them. So we found ourselves really having to now deal with things that were bigger than us. And it was part of the system that basically that's why what we had in 1985 that we created as a Young Lions generation, it was a liberated South Africa within the country. We didn't have to fight battles across the border. We fought, we liberated this country, we created dual governance system, if you like, dual power, if you like, where we undermined all the structures because part of what we did was to ban prefect systems, and we started to elect our own democratically elected SRCs. And I became a president not only of my school, but the president of all associations of SRCs, and every section of our community was organized. And what we further did was then obviously to ensure that all of the UDF affiliated organizations are created, within the townships where we were. So when you go into prison, someone tells you leadership. We didn't understand where was this one.
You thought you are the leaders.
Who are these ones? Because we're in the forefront. We're fighting. We saw our brothers killed and comrades killed. So we turned him back. So no, not. We continued. Until in the wisdom of the leadership, they said, but where do they come from? So Tweetbank said, man, send Kashabango, who is a former, death row prisoner. And he then knew how to handle it. Because the moment we had this from Middleback, our knees melted. And that's the only way we could be convinced that we should suspend hunger strike. But we were excited because, so what I did then when I started working on this list, and I spent my entire 3 years going to each one of them. I think when I was released, I probably met more than 90% of the entire prison population. There's no one that is in Robben Island that doesn't know about Lassy Chiwayo. Because I literally went to each one of them based on any exposure of something that is unique about them. But interestingly, when I was there, I'm told, hey man, there's B section where all the leaders, the treason trial, co-accused. And I said, but that's exactly where I want to go. You know what I did? I asked the prison warder, hey, how do I go there?
Yeah.
He said, no, you can't go there. I said, no, but I'm told there are old people there. I just want to go help them. What do they do? They said, no, they're always in the garden. I said, no, but I want to go help them, extract weed and carry any. Yeah. They said, no, but you can't do that. I had to write a letter to the prison.
To ask.
And I was allowed actually to go in there. And that's how I met with Elias Mtswaledi, most particularly. Became very close to him. And of course, I became very close to a lot of that Rivonia trialist, Boba Mukwai, and that's how one got exposed to the rich history of the struggle in the ANC.
Very, very
Chef
interesting.
Khadebe. So I had a systematic. Among those that I was very close to also was Animal, Colin Shabane. So, but we never rested. And within a month, I got appointed to be the most senior leader of the underground, because of the underground structures of the ANC. Within a month, most senior leader of the entire section. That was also responsible to ensuring information comes in and out of the you
were really dedicated to the activism that you started when you were so young. And I think also the events that happened in your life from before you were 10 with your grandmother, the forced removals and all of that.
Grandmother played a pivotal role.
Very, very interesting. Now, I'm asking myself now, sitting here, you were fighting for all your life. You were an ANC member.
I've never had a break without.
For our liberation, you wanted the ANC to rule this country. The ANC ruled this country in 1994. But now, fast forward to now, we have a government of national unity.
Yeah. Let me just take you through something very important that I think has to be mentioned. I think we're blessed in a way, very humbled, honored, privileged to have served the former Eastern Transvaal and eventually Mpumalanga, to a point that, we had this amazing respect, admiration, adoration that were showered with by members of the ANC. Wherever there were any process of elections in the Youth League, or even in the ANC, we always came very, very top. Where it would be Comrade Matthew and myself, always number one, number two. Even when it was an election into ANC structures, there would be that popularity. And then the Youth League decided we had to serve, but the ANC still kept us in the province. They still felt, no, you can't go. You have to serve in the province. To a point that if you can look at all the lists in the elections that have taken place, we've always been, in the top 10, but most importantly, leading in terms of numbers. A list that determined membership to the candidate list. The list that determined the candidates of the ANC before elections. And then something interestingly happened. A conspiracy in the Youth League. I won't mention some of the individuals. I respect them because some of them have passed on. Linked with other external interests that said everything must be done to ensure that it doesn't become part of those that go to the legislature, parliament. And I was removed completely from lists for no reason. And same group interacted with others to influence them. And I was the only one. In the whole country, I was the only serving Youth League leader that was on the list of parliament.
Okay.
And in all three lists. And number one in province to province, number one in National Assembly, list from the province, I think. And eventually, I think it must have been Comrade Matthew Posa. And I only learned when I was also in Shell House when we had. And by the way, I need to bring the special relationship we had with Madiba and the old guard. They began to have a liking on us when we decided to take the bull by its horns. The issue of leadership succession and management of transition of the movement from all the different strands, underground, intelligence, exile, foreign missions, the army, intelligence, whatever. So we are among those that were at the center. And of course, those that operated inside the country and those that came from popular mass organizations affiliated to UDF, the Mass Democratic Movement. So we knew we had a delicate process to manage. And we approached, I was one of the three representatives that were assigned to engage the timers, but also engage Sisulu, who was on a sickbed in Linden, to say, we're going to have a problem with the conference coming. We want you to close any possibility of contestation that was going to be hostile, that already had names like Krisani, the late Thabo Mbeki, Paulo Jordan was raised at some point. Jeff Kadebe's name was also raised at some point. Jacob Zuma's name was mentioned, Matthew Posa's name. We're about 5 to 6 potential contenders from what we could pick up. And we then thought, let's step in. Persuaded, of course, but we engaged first with the top 6. Before they even were top 6, but that leadership that was created when prisoners were freed up, the interim leadership, Sisulu was the first, and Mandela came, and O.R. Tambo was the last to come, and we had then individually engaged them, and they basically supported our perspective, which was Oliver Tambo to become national chairperson. And we motivated that there must be that creation of a position of the larger-than-life kind of caliber, the last line of defense that is more like an epitome and repository of information and knowledge and the history and heritage. And that is a total summation and epitome of what the movement is about. So the national chairperson position was created with that in mind, that it will have that very important, custodian, of the ANC memory and the repository, living ancestor, if I may use that word. And we then said, Madiba president, Sisulu deputy, and we said, let's keep the old-timers re-elected as they were in exile. And so as a secretary general, then for the sensitivities, if you are to look at the ANC and never, in Africa as a whole, never undermine the dynamics of tribe, ethnicity. And we then, but also historically said, if you are to look at the evolution of the South Africa's liberation struggle, there's no way that you can ignore the importance of 2 frontiers where the fiercest battles were fought, which is the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. And you can get it from their account you can, and from the recount of events, that you have more wars that have taken place in both provinces and therefore blood that was shed. So we brought that history. We brought also the reality that when you look at the ANC's leadership composition, but also historically, where the first meetings took place. Most people are not even aware that one of the most important meetings that led to the ANC's formation was what took place at Uhlange in Inanda.
Okay.
A meeting attended by Chiwayo, Kampande. That was among those chiefs, I would say among those traditional leaders that were central. And, when an idea whose moment has come, that idea would be unstoppable. How you can sit and think there could be coordination of a similar role that ensures traditional leaders in other parts of the country. And also bear in mind, the defeat of Bambata in 1906 was the final stage and phase of the engagement of the enemy through what you can call the wars of resistance. But what got intensified in the process was all the traditional leaders identifying young, capable, capable people that they then sent through the mission church institutions to go study. And the gatherings that took place in almost every part of the country was the traditional leaders, abafundisi, calling on those subjects to say what is the best way of engaging the enemy. And those that came with enlightenment, that is about organizational forms of resistance, political organs and systems, are the ones that then obviously advise the traditional leaders to say, let's try create this vehicle. So I'm bringing that because it's very important that post unbanning of the organization, you have to take into consideration the dynamics of the ecosystem and most importantly, those important historic heritage matters. So Zuma came in that context when we motivated that you cannot ignore KZN. Let's then look for someone that is a ethnic, that carries the authority, the profile, but also most importantly, the confidence of the president, which was O.R. Tambo, to then becomes the deputy secretary. Unfortunately, that is one of those things that got some of us hated by those that were, because, you can understand, people that were in exile and those that were in the camps and what have you, and even prison. The mentality of exposure to a limited number of a community and the belief that is inculcated in anyone that you are naturally a leader. You are naturally the one that you are here. You are naturally part of the core that will determine and influence the ANC. And suddenly you come back into the country, there's a powerful force that has constituted itself that doesn't have those dimensions.
Yeah, exactly.
Of exile and camps, but that is internal and it's suddenly running with the, what is called kingmakers. Yeah, because we're indeed.
So it was very important at that time to was the way to consolidate the exiles and insiles.
Of course. And what makes us different was the fact that we are not conflicted. We were not standing for those positions. So we had the legitimacy to lead. So we lobbied the Women's League. So it is us and in fact, it's so interesting because when you look at, when I was released, I met three comrades, Pet, Mashiane, Mankatlane, and Jonkun. And I was told, by the way, when I was in prison, I was among the first 11 that our movement agreed to, identified and agreed. These are the first one that must be released after Nelson Mandela. And after the ANC and Nationalist Party agreed to sign a Pretoria Minute and Cross Discrimination, we were the first to be sent as a test case. When I arrived, and I'm told I'm prison. That's how effective the underground machinery of the ANC was. That Lassie, we know you already started teaching students here about their educational, courses from social sciences, history, and, because I always kept my mind busy with what stimulates me intellectually. So they said, you must know that when you arrive, and because I was already pursuing studies through correspondence, forget about the tertiary education, going full-time, because I'd already declared to them that I intend to go study full-time. They said, no, forget you're going to be met. And when I was met, I was told, your next instruction, do settle a bit with family, but you're off to Nelspruit. I said, what's happening? He said, no, you're going to be part of Reestablishing the ANC back in the country. That's a direct instruction from Lusaka. So can you see where it comes? And indeed, already even before I was released from prison, it means it is internalized that I'm going to be a leader of the Youth League, and that's how my election as a secretary. It was managed leadership transition. So we're part of that, managing transition, but still allowing the democratic process, but also allowing what Chinese call so a merit-based leadership that comes with meritocracy that comes with a very compelling case of an account that can be linked with the contribution that creates predictability, that when you take this and place him there or her there, this is the role that we play. So the sophisticated nature of how we established the ANC was basically the ANC Youth League and the Women's League as the first branches that we create. And after, we go basically, when we met as those that were running with we met, we brought women, youth. Then we went to families of traditional stalwarts and whoever, anyone in any community where there's been a comrade that went to exile, that died and what have you. Those are the first individuals who called into the meeting of establishing the ANC. Because we are able to bring people that are in a way connected to what the ANC is about, that have memory and not nuance. And that's why we had very strong ANC structures, because every one of those that we recruited were actually recruited deliberately, consciously, and purposefully. It was not a free-for-all kind of.
Exactly. I mean, it's a whole book, actually. I was trying to go with you, fast forward a bit, back and forth. It's a whole book. You can tell us about that history, which is very, very interesting, but it also tells me about your involvement. I mean, the details. But now, somebody like you, this is the question I was asking before you veered off, but you brought us a very interesting context. Somebody like you, ANC throughout from your youth, Robben Island, you come back into the country, help the ANC to establish branches, structures and everything now inside the country. Fast forward to now. And
that's why it's not an accident that in the process of that evolution, overwhelmingly, a very important, legitimate section of the ANC felt we had to be part of the succession of leadership. That's why we contested.
Exactly.
In 1997, we contested, 98, we contested for presidency. Actually, the context brought as well by the generation that was with Peter Mokaba was that you are the one that can best ensure transition and hand over the baton to the next generation. But, but because there are interests that were so entrenched that had already taken a decision that there should be everything done. Especially, interestingly, the one who was a beneficiary of us saying it's your time to become deputy secretary had a problem with that. And the one, when we engaged with the Thabo Mbeki's people, they were saying, but who told you that you can think that Thabo Mbeki can actually be led by Zuma? And Zuma is prioritized to be part of the top 6 before Thabo Mbeki. So we we attracted hostility from the one who's a beneficiary and the one that believes we stopped him from rising.
Exactly.
And Chris Hani, when we engaged him, he said, look, if Thabo Mbeki stands, I'm going to contest. But I admire you for your bravery, but the fact that you could take this bull by its horn and actually drive it as you are, and I support fully the lineup. So that's where the hatred, deep sense of repugnance for this youth league or psycho and youth league that thinks that they can just come in and become a powerful force that determine the future of the ANC. And that's how we scattered and isolated and dealt with.
Exactly.
Time. And therefore, what happened is that handworks were created to contest us. In Mpumalanga, a handwork that hijacked the conference results. But there was a direct order. There were 18 members of the NEC that were sent directly by Zuma, including Malusi. And the mandate was do everything possible. I don't want that man's head.
Yeah, exactly. Because now what you are saying brings me to the question I've been trying for. Now I'm going to try to ask you for the
yes,
third
no,
time.
Fine. Yeah, no, that's fine. You can. Yeah,
because it now already early from that time you're mentioning that now there was starting to be divisions of sorts, isolation of certain leaders, out of maybe it could be jealousy, it could be anything.
Yeah,
but I
know one thing that I was told on my face by even those that came as part of what was called my Mapisa Ngawula Commission. I was told, I said, hey, we came here, want to remove Metipos. And we were advised that if there's any one person that you must prepare to come across that will build a strong wall that protects Metipos. And not because I protected him, because I did not think that there may have been challenges. It was immaterial of whether or not there are challenges. The manner, the matter was approached. 5 leaders from Mpumalanga, the late James Nkambule, Jackson Tembu, may their souls rest in peace. Chema Silela, may his soul rest in peace. Cheche Matlalela, Cheche Mapena, Fish Matlalela. Through James, when he already had a problem now that came from Paksport and other problems. And of course, I want Comrade Metipos. When they identified James as secretary and put him in a board of Paksport, I said, we are destroying this young man. He will not survive. And indeed, tension started, and then they went and said, no, we must remove Metipos. I remember it happened when he just got involved in an accident. A meeting is convened, normal meetings Friday on a Monday. There's a leadership that is not announced is coming. Just after the attack of Lesotho when Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the late, may his soul rest in peace, was an acting president, he sent Amabutu, the army to go sort out a major problem between Basotho and Zulus that could not be resolved in the mountain battles. He clobbered them. So when he came and the president with his delegation sit there and say, no, we are here to deal with a problem involving Metipos. And I said, no, but wait a moment. What is this meeting? What is the status? Who has convened it? And why are we treated like this as a leadership that is not even advised that there's going to be this meeting? And I jokingly said, but I thought, normally when a father comes, we must be excited, happy, and not run around there. Taking cover. We thought that part of what you'll explain as you are here, part of what you'll take us through as you are here, President, is what happened in Lesotho. I was told when I left there by Spats Ngonyama and others and said, you'll be in big trouble. You don't do that to TM. No one speaks like that to him, not even members of the NEC. I said, no, but that's what you're doing to destroy him. He needs to be confronted. This is not a God. You're not dealing with a God here. Deal with an ordinary, infallible individual like us. His leadership strength will come from us. That for me was the beginning of a long, protracted, never-ending battle until we smoked peace at an event of the strategic dialogue we both addressed. Yeah.
So
I oppose that basically, even in the commission.
Yeah.
I said if there's anything that they know, they must enlighten us and not expect us to be the ones that are putting Methiposa's neck on the block over what you don't know. So we spoke about what we did with him when he was chairperson, all the achievements, and we spoke about what he did as a premier, and said from that, if that was a balanced scorecard, we'll say this man has done the best. But if there's anything that you want us to know, please take us into confidence so that we can see things from a perspective.
Yeah, exactly. No, Matthew Fosa mentions in his book those incidents.
So it was career limiting, as they told me, last you are a rising star, and actually you are regarded. They told me on my face, you are regarded as the most senior leader despite your age. And you can't say you don't know what Matthew Fosa has been doing. I said, don't know anything. Make us aware. But anyway.
But now those issues, would you think then eventually the divisions you're mentioning happening earlier on eventually led to further divisions that we saw in the Polokwane, Mangaung conferences? Now we have a GNU government. The ANC is totally out of power. Would you think this was a build-up to...
They are related.
Yeah.
Mpumalanga served as a platform to... Remember, the tensions actually surfaced more when TM took over.
Yes.
You can see something that suggests there was a trend to remove those that are associated with Mandela's legacy.
Yeah.
Popo Melefe was on the run. Terralikota was on the run. Tokyo was on the run. The three of them were said to have been planning a coup that was never discussed in the ANC. It just went public. You know, if there's anything that you can do in undermining an organization and its culture, is to leave a home where all of those that regard that home as sacred, that need to engage as people of the same family and not hang their tetili in the open. If things can be discussed in Runkulu, and the first time you hear that there's a problem is through an announcement by the late Minister of Safety and Security of Police, may his soul rest in peace, Steve Tshwete. By the way, I'm not sure if they spoke directly together, but I spoke to both Comrade Matthew and Steve Tshwete because I was very close to Comrade Steve and said, no, I think you made a big blunder, a mistake. I will facilitate a session for you to engage. I won't be part of it, but for you.
That was the time when Steve Tshwete
went public and said there was a plot.
By Matthews.
Yeah. He regretfully said, he probably acted in an unbecoming manner. And I think they smoked a peace pipe. But I mean, the three. So that was part of what really created this problem. And, you know, in an instance where you make people victims, you can only create negativity and enemies. And that's basically what could have built up to a situation where TM eventually got isolated and lost. And now that brought a completely different era in the life of the ANC. Because we may have differed, we may have sharply engaged, but what I appreciate is that we differed intellectually. Yeah. But the other side, I know. You can see that's when space opened for rogue elements, because the point to which anyone would be identified as a potential leader was not based on merit, ability, capacity, where you come from in the movement. No, on the one that can bring numbers by hook or crook, even if it means eliminating others. I didn't know when I decided after the contestation with Mabuza in 2008, and actually for me that was the final. It was a final battle, because Mpumalanga has always been a terrain where these national battles are fought. And that's why it was not an accident that the first person that had to be dealt with was Methipos. You know, and after Polokwane, it was in Mpumalanga where it was said, all manner of lies were said. I'm not from Mpumalanga. I was part of a class of 96. I don't even know what that class of 19, whatever. I've never heard any word coming out of Titi Mabuza that is about class struggle, but I was presented as a capitalist, and this man was a popular choice that is pro. And that's why COSATU, SACP, everyone gathered and ganged up. Everyone, including those 18. Some called me on the side. I mean, Comrade Joe Patla was there, Comrade Aaron Muswaledi, people that were not supposed to be there, that were there. The one person that, may his soul rest in peace, came and confided to me and said, hey, I don't know what it is that we have done. We were literally told, coming from there, is the late Colin Shawan. There was direct instruction that Lassy must not be allowed to be chairperson by hook or crook. And that conference was won. We won that conference. We won it. Actually, I can give you names of people you can go interview that were part of the rigging. You can talk to Walter Sithole, you can talk to Norman Machika, you can talk to Norman Mukwena, who doctored every result and ensured that, of course, I mean, you can talk to Charles Makola and others who were part of the team. Those that know the legitimate results that were taken away and those that were doctored by those three. One from a computer-based tampering with the numbers, the others, Norman Machika, duplicating. Yeah. And all of them filling on votes that were in favor of Titi Mabuza. And when all of us gathered and we heard what happened, I said, I've not come to Mpumalanga to be a martyr. I was sent even through the support of Matiba and others to say, go sort out Mbombela and the host city status. So I said, I will stick to that. They cried. We met.
Exactly. But that 1998 conference.
2008.
What, 2008?
Sorry. Yeah, 1998 was 10 years. It was with Malusi. Even there are things we can talk about, which includes changing a delegation that came from Limpopo primarily and some part. That because, when you want to win conference, when your delegates are dependent on an organizer that support one of the candidates, that is part of the conspiracy. That will then send transport that will not go to fetch the legitimate. They fetched students that were part of SASCO and gave them identities of delegates that were left.
Yeah.
And others were actually made to get drunk in Hillbrow and all of that. So it was part of a conspiracy that stop that one. Yeah, should never. That's why there was a manufacturing of leadership. And in fact, and I would say it directly, part of the problems we had here was the elimination of memory of a very important contingent of youth leaders. There was a systematic way of dealing with that generation so that it doesn't emerge. And when its time has come, a generation after them was encouraged, it is your time.
But what was the cause of that? Why?
Because you can, if you don't take nonsense, if you're not the one that sticks the tongue to belong, and be looking for what you can lick.
Just the hot heads and rebels.
No, I've never. Honestly, I was raised to value principles, to value ethics, to be loyal, to entrench my conviction in what I believe in, and maybe that little history that I brought of people that were prepared to die or live in their ancestral home and settle elsewhere. It tells you about where I come from. That for my conviction, I'm prepared to turn my back.
Yeah, exactly.
Even when exposed to the best of opportunities. I could have been, I was telling someone that if I wanted, he would not even have been a deputy president. That's why when they came and said, no, we want you to come home, I said, hey, but you're coming to recruit me to come become a chairperson of the ANC? If I avail myself, that's where I belong. That force of darkness that has risen under mysterious circumstances.
Yeah. So now the 2008 conference being rigged against you, is that the time when you decide that, look, I've got to remove myself from the politics?
I was already in Mbombela, and with all the intensity, because when I was told I must go to Mpumalanga, I asked a few comrades, leaders that are around, and I said, I went to support me, because I dig. Me, I don't take things off the surface. I dig. Will you accept the recommendations? I penned a 200-page document that dealt primarily with the circumstances leading to the political killings of Mpumalanga. That's one. And I also did a 100-page diagnostics, situational analysis, organizational appraisal of what has been happening in Mpumalanga, even brought in the ecosystems of a pre-liberation, after liberation, and how this created fertile ground for continuation of Bantustan culture and mentality. So, and the analysis then really went deep to trace where there could have been challenges that led to the institutionalization of corruption, even in the womb of the new order. But then I unpacked all what happened that dealt with mismanagement, maladministration, paralysis or paralyzing of the of government institutions through the authority wielded by those in the ANC that were in charge of what's called deployment. That's what explained how Justice Nsibande came about, how Jacob Gladler came about in Mpumalanga and Mbombela, prepared for something that was already seen in advance as something that is very important of the 2010 FIFA World Cup. So I captured the entirety of that, and I gave reports to all leaders of the ANC that mattered. And that's what got me eliminated, and by the way, poisoned as well. Because there was an instruction I must never come back out of Mpumalanga in 2011 alive.
Let's take it step by step. So 2008 conference, you were already a mayor of Mbombela.
Yes, I was a mayor of Mbombela.
Yeah. So then you had done all these reports, analyzed the situation, presented all those reports. Intelligence,
Kispin Janja, Anwar Ramat, James Mgluli was in charge of criminal intelligence.
Yes.
Selected members of the leadership of the ANC in the top 6. I will respect their names. Deputy Minister of Constitutional Development. So it was only when I submitted that in March, the rest I did give, nothing happened, to the high office that I started running for my dear life.
Okay.
And eventually leading to my position.
But now do you think...
And the leadership, by the way, because I convened a meeting impose the meeting of the top 6 to top 5 of Mpumalanga, and I handed.
So do you think though that the conference then that what you did then influenced the whole thinking about you winning the 2008 conference?
There's always been that problem that I'm my own man. I was told by someone who said, "Kanti wena isithunzi sakho ubani?" Ngithi usho ukuthini? Athi no, wonke umuntu in the ANC in some way or the other kunala ayakhona makushisa ipolitiki iyashisa. Kule generation yakho kufanele kube nomuntu oyisithunzi sakho. Sicabanga ukuthi umuntu kaphosa. Sicabanga ukuthi umuntu Mtlante. We also thought there might just be some influence Mantashe has on you because he knows you when you are still a shop steward at NUM when you're 14. Kanti wena ubani umlalelayo? Ngathi no, but the problem is that you are assuming that isithunzi is something more superior to light. But I'm a product of light. There's no shadow that forms without an obstruction of light. So maybe mina ngifundisa ukuthi ngilandele ukukhanya ngifuna ukukhanya hayi into isebumnyameni.
Yeah, exactly. Now that you've spoken about this Mbombela issue, what really went wrong? You came at a time when the World Cup is coming to South Africa. You become a mayor of the city of Mbombela, a host city. There's a stadium that is being built. But now there's a problem of corruption. What was happening? Take us through what was happening there.
Lento injengetata. Ufuna libekela amaqanda mara ulo uyalikhama wena. Awuliki chance ulikhama la. Mbombela has collapsed primarily because there are those that have already predetermined that they are going to direct the opportunities. Our big strongman down there double-dipped. He promised the group ga Robert Kumete ukuthi niwinile. Ne group eno hebetheleli no Bowie mtawu ukuthi wiwinile. And in the process interacted with a lot of people, the late Mhlali and what have you. And it's not a good thing to bring out something that may have also generated tensions between Mhlali no TT, based on the fact that in the process there was betrayal. Because those that may have thought lobby would go in this direction, like our men would do. I always say to people who don't know him that until 2 seconds before a decision is taken, never ever think you know him. So he did exactly that. He double-tipped and, pushed. But he was going to win both ways. That's the same way as double standards. So good ngapha, NTZ 17 ngapha, CR 17. So that's the center of the collapse. The assumption of leadership by Titi Mabuza became deputy president, deputy chairperson, and eventually the chairperson. That he built those networks that systematically destroyed the ANC, eroded the authority of the ANC, and created his own alternative structures, and those that he manufactured, that he placed in positions of leadership. Jacob Dladla could not have had anything that made him qualified to become a municipal manager, but it was primarily the 2010 FIFA World Cup that enabled him to place him there. I can tell you even know where meetings took place and where a decision was taken, that everything had to be done to get him there. So it's the collapse of state institutions to enable people to, access opportunities, especially Matenda.
But you were the mayor then. Didn't you have any influence on who is appointed as the municipal manager?
No, but I'm getting to the
Oh, it was all...
No. So Jacob Dladla was already suspended. There was a case, and Jim Hlala got killed before he could provide evidence. I also tried to persuade him to say, look, we have a major international responsibility. Just leave this thing. Let's execute 2010. This thing is the movement will help. You fought your battles, just leave it. It will just cause trouble. Then I went to Kayo Mpongos, who was the administrator. I met with Titi Espe, Lapangase Medical Clinic, individually, and I met Uche Kopladalapo. I can't remember where I met Titi, where I said, I want to resolve this issue of Jacob Dladla. We'll give him a package for him to leave. And we offered, I think it was 3 million. Jacob Lala understood and he supported it. Titi said, no, that's a brilliant idea, continue. I spoke to Kayumpongose, he agreed. Then Titi went to speak to his gangster to say, we are trying. If he's able to have this matter resolved, then force him to bring Jacob Lala. And that's when Peter Mignoni and others led the battle to say I must be removed if I don't bring Jacob Lala. And that's where the battle started until I left Mpumalanga.
But so basically you could not toe the line. You went as the mayor.
No, I was clear.
You were not listening to anyone.
I was clear what needed to be done in Mbombela. I was clear what mandate I had. I executed it even without support from those that sent me. Instead, when I brought even the report after a success story in other countries, people that execute what we had to do when we were 13 months to ensure we saved 2010 FIFA World Cup. And if 2010 FIFA did not take place in Mbombela, we already gathered information that Morocco was already going with pickaxe to find a reason to punch hole into South Africa's host status, meaning the possibilities that South Africa would have been withdrawn.
So Mbombela was really fixing Mbombela was key.
It was key.
South Africa to get the World Cup.
That's why even Madiba said, hey, you have to go. And I said, they told me in 2006, I said, but I'm going to die there. So I resisted until I think it's Melo found a way of pushing, even getting my ID without my permission to IEC for me to register to become. 2 years I wanted an assurance, 2006, 2008, that I am not being targeted by creating a political grave for me. Because I need assurance that when I confront that situation and I deal with it, I'll be supported. But I was left to fight it alone.
So when you were called to serve in Mbombela as the mayor, you had already decided to leave politics. You were in business. No,
I left in 2001 after all these shenanigans of the hostility that involved Metiposa, TM, and I decided 1999 when President Thabo Mbeki appointed Mahlangu that no, I'm out of this. So I was just waiting for a moment. So I stayed 2000, 2001 I retired. And I took that decision in 2001 when one day the president of the ANC, Thabo Mbeki, decided Lassy Chiwayo. And initially it was me having to go to Cape Town and Thabang Makwetla to come to Mpumalanga. Then I think there was intervention to say, but it will be clear that this one is a target. So they made it 6 to go up, 6 to go down. Then I went to President Zuma and President Secretary General Kgalema Motlanthe to say, no, I'm not going to Cape Town. My schedule will go, I won't go. They said, no, but you can't do that. There's no one who defies the president. I said, I will. I'm not going to Cape Town. So they persuaded me and said, no, but you know what? Let's handle this like this. Go meet with Simang. Help him in that office so that when you create something that you are doing, you're working to also help the ANC raise funds. Then go to Cape Town, but keep on going, coming back. Make sure you don't miss 3 meetings because then there'll be a problem there. But just serve for a year, not to be seen to have defied a president. And I complied. I felt like I was in exile for that period in a foreign country that I wanted to be. The pressure I had of just wanting, because it was in May, and the May 31st to leave. I just wanted to leave. And when it came, I didn't even report. I left. I went back to private business, and that's when you came up with the idea of how train.
Yeah.
Use the bathroom.